Welcome to the Counselling Armchair, hosted by the counselling team at RMIT University. This podcast aims to help you manage your university life so you can be at your best. We'll be sharing with you tips on student life here and ways to enhance your mental well-being.
Hi everyone, welcome back. So we're going to be talking about my second favourite topic today, and that's sleep. We have a special guest today, and her name is Dr. Chloe in our team, or aka Dr. Sleep. So welcome, Dr. Sleep. And thanks for coming along to chat with Liz and I. Maybe you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Chloe.
All right. Well, thanks, Yvonne, and thanks, Liz, for having me. I work with the RMIT Counselling and Psychology Service. I've been with the service for about 18 months. I'm a clinical psychologist and researcher. Prior to working here, I also completed an internship with the service when I was doing my doctoral training, and I was supervised by the lovely Liz.
Oh, Chloe, thank you.
You guys go a bit way back.
I paid her to say
We
that.
go way back, Liz.
We
yeah.
do.
As well as another wonderful psychologist at our service, Suzanne. So in my clinical work, while I'm interested, of course, in targeting clients presenting problems and symptoms, I also really like to take a therapeutic approach that helps clients to become more aware of their many positive qualities and their strengths and the things that they're already doing well. So I work with my clients to help them to feel empowered and to identify their values, as well as to develop goals underpinned by their values, and then to actively move towards their goals by applying a range of evidence-based skills and strategies. So that's me.
That sounds lovely. Thanks for that intro. And I'm sure that lots of clients are very empowered working with you and feel their lives being enriched, and having made a difference.
I hope so.
It's great to have you on the team. And great to have you back, actually, because you did the internship a while ago and you have returned since as a staff. So it's great to have you back.
Sure is.
Well, we'll get us started. Our topic being about sleep. We all love a good night's sleep. We also know that some of us, or many of us, do struggle with sleep and having a good night's sleep. Maybe I'll just start with that. So what actually gets in the way of a good night's sleep or a good sleep?
Yeah, so there's no single factor, Yvonne, that interferes with good sleep, but rather there are many reasons that someone might become sleep deficient. So these can include lifestyle factors as well as emotional and physiological factors. For example, some of the main ones amongst our students are that students often report not having enough time to sleep because of other responsibilities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it may also be that work or their study schedules are in conflict with their internal body clocks. So they might be working late at night or studying early in the morning, something like that.
Oh, gosh, I've heard that a lot of times from clients, doing jobs in hospitality or working at, night spots and working till 3 or 4 in the morning and then trying to go to uni during the day. So that totally makes sense that would have an impact on your sleep-wake cycle.
Yeah, for sure. Another common thing is that people might not have the right environment for sleep, and we'll go into that in a lot more detail later on, probably.
Cool.
Yeah. Got some tips
useful
around that. Yeah. Students might engage in lifestyle choices that can negatively impact on sleep, such as excessive alcohol or perhaps recreational drug use or late night gaming. Being woken up frequently is another reason that people complain of having poor sleep. So this might be a snoring bed partner. Quite
Don't
common.
We all love those.
Yeah. Crying babies sometimes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
yes.
Or noisy
Or
housemates. Or puppies.
Oh, puppies. Yes.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Definitely.
Yep.
Noisy housemates, traffic. There can be lots of reasons that noise interferes.
Thunderstorms.
Thunderstorms.
We had a whopper last night, didn't we?
Wind last night. Yeah, absolutely.
So also a lot of psychological conditions can impact on sleep, such as anxiety and stress, depression, and of course, sleep disorders, diagnosed sleep disorders. Medical conditions too, such as experiencing, chronic pain, as well as prescribed medicines that can interfere with sleep. So there's a lot of reasons that someone might not be able to get a good sleep.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And actually, as you were saying that, Chloe, I remembered that when I was pregnant with my children, the first thing that I noticed was my sleep went really bad. And so, that made me realize there's a hormonal connection as well, right, to good sleep, because that was very diagnostic for me. As soon as I started having insomnia, I went, hang on, I might just do a pregnancy test.
Absolutely. Any kind of hormonal change can definitely interfere with sleep as well. Yeah.
Makes sense. That's a long list.
It is. Lots happening.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it's like sleep is one of those precious things that, it's like it can so easily go wrong, for so many different reasons, and yet it's so, so important. What happens, Chloe, when you don't have enough sleep, or if you're having like really poor quality sleep?
Yeah, so again, experiencing poor sleep or insufficient sleep can look quite different for different people. So it might look like falling asleep easily and staying asleep easily, but just not getting enough overall hours of sleep per night. It can be just taking a long time to fall asleep. So anything more than about 30 minutes is considered a bit more than what it should be to drop off to sleep. It can look like frequent night waking, so just an inability to stay asleep. You might go off okay, but you keep waking up throughout the night. Or it could be just waking up too early and not being able to fall asleep again, even though you want to. Yeah, and it's just important to note there that, while there is no exact amount of sleep that's ideal for everyone, sleep needs really do vary, but there is a recommended average amount of sleep, which is it's about 7 to 9 hours per 24 hours for adults.
Interesting. Yeah, okay.
Now, most people find this to be an ideal amount of sleep to function the next day. Yeah.
And is there something about the cycle? I don't know if you're going to go into that a little bit, but we're talking about how there are stages of sleep from the stage 1, so like from REM through to the non-REM, so the stage through to stage 4, I think. So is that to do with it's about getting that amount of cycle within that 7-8 hour window?
Yeah, ideally you go through the sleep cycles, and ideally it's best if you can to get that 7 to 9 hours in one block of sleep to ensure that you do go through those different important stages of sleep. But if that's not possible, as long as you are getting those 7 to 9 hours within 24 hours, that's better than not getting enough sleep at all.
That makes plenty of sense. Yeah. And that's a good point about the stages of sleep, because I don't know what the science is behind this, but I know when I've had like a really light sleep where I feel like maybe I haven't gone into that deep stage 4 sleep, and I might think, well, I was in bed for 9 hours or something like that, but, I don't feel refreshed. Like I feel like my energy hasn't been restored, and maybe it has something to do with that, like having a very broken sleep, waking up a lot, or not entering into those deeper levels of sleep.
Yeah, we can wake up feeling not rested, eh? Yeah. We can, even though you've been in bed for the 7-9 hours, but that can also happen if we're not entering the deep sleep and we don't wake up feeling necessarily like the rested or refreshed type of feeling.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yep.
Yeah. Well, we know that everyone bangs on about good sleep. I imagine no one complains about having a good night's sleep. So why do we need a good sleep?
Yes, that is a very good question. But before I respond to it, I'd just be interested to ask you both how you felt the next day if you've ever experienced a poor night's sleep the night before.
That's a great question. Yes.
Very good question.
Yeah. Let me take myself back to my baby days when not me being a baby when I walked around in a fog. Look, I think you just feel like you're in a fog. You feel like you can't think properly. Headachy, like I often feel like a really like squeezing sensation in my head, like someone's clamping on my skull. I feel like I'm really short-tempered, irritable. Maybe I burst into tears really easily, the things that wouldn't normally upset me might really upset me. Those are some of the things that I notice when I've had poor sleep. What about you, Yvonne?
Well, I was going to say sometimes I do this stress sleep. It's probably something I'm going to call that now. But like you were saying before, Liz, like we sleep, but we don't get to a deep stage, or you wake feeling like, I don't know if I actually slept,
Yes.
all that much or all that deeply.
Yeah.
And like, as you're talking about, like there's this, head full and waking up feeling a little bit agitated, or more so throughout the day. But I certainly know waking up going, I don't think I've slept enough,
Yeah.
or I slept. And it feels
Well
like there's
enough.
this, that's right. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
this sort of hovering between like a wake and a sleep cycle, or this kind of consciousness, without getting that too deep. But I call that stress sleep. And I have experienced that before, and it's like, oh, this is not a good feeling waking up. And then the agitation or irritation builds throughout the day, and it's not a good feeling.
No.
Definitely then the fatigue also sets in. Like there are moments during the day, the fatigue, and this wanting caffeine and or sugar. So then I go for like, it's 3 o'clock. I feel like a sugar hit.
That pick me up.
That's right. This pick me up. It's like linking back to that sleep or stressed sleep.
Yeah. Oh, hey, that's really interesting, Yvonne, because that kind of sleep that you described, I get that on aeroplanes. I can never fall deeply asleep on aeroplanes. So, it's like I know I'm sort of sleeping, but I feel like I'm actually awake at the same time.
Yeah, good point.
Yes, that's like aeroplane sleep, and it's not very restoring.
No. Yes, I've heard the sleeps that we get on airplanes being likened to a torture trance.
Oh, really?
So you're kind of asleep, but you're kind of in this horrible, uncomfortable trance where it's not proper sleep at all.
Gosh, that's a really good description, isn't it?
Gosh.
I always envy people who seem to be able to sleep well on planes. I have a friend who can. She'll just go out, But yeah, for me, it's just no. It's definitely a torture trance for me.
Not a great way to start holidays if we're going to holidays.
No, exactly.
So all of the things that we've just been describing are really common consequences of poor sleep. And they really demonstrate how we can all feel and think and behave quite differently, usually worse, depending on whether or not we've had a good night's sleep. So I'll just delve into some of them a little bit more. So getting enough quality sleep, ideally every night, is just so important on every level. It promotes healthy brain function, which is essential, as well as emotional well-being. And you were mentioning how you start to feel a bit more irritable during the day, and that's certainly connected to that.
Yeah.
Also, it promotes healing and repair of our physical body.
Of course, yeah.
If we're ill, so important, during winter too, when we might be fighting off colds and COVID or whatever else, that we are getting enough sleep to ensure that we're going to be able to make a speedy recovery. So as well for students, getting enough sleep is so important because it promotes optimal daytime cognitive performance.
Ah, yes, that's a good one.
Yeah. So studies have shown that getting adequate sleep can significantly improve problem-solving abilities and retention, as well as consolidation of information. And obviously all of these things are needed for achieving good academic outcomes.
Oh gosh, that makes so much sense. But isn't it ironic that the one thing that students do, or I certainly did, I'll claim it as my own, is either stay up really, really late or get up really, really early and cram. And it's like, that sounds like actually that's the worst thing to do for good brain function, for good cognitive function, right?
Very relatable. Because we think we can kind of do more with the time that if I'm awake and I'm conscious, I can do a lot more. I can fit a lot more in. I can cram a lot more in. Repetition may make it permanent. Rote learning may make it permanent, but it actually isn't.
Yeah.
Ironically.
So another important reason for sleep, and I have a bit of a personal experience of this one as well. So I'll just say with my experience as a new mum too, Liz, I was really sleep deprived from frequent night waking, and at that time of my life I had quite a long drive to work through winding country roads.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, and a few times I recall, just almost driving off the road from fatigue, just being so tired that my concentration was impacted. So getting a good night's sleep is important for maintaining our personal safety as well as the safety of others.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. So, research has found
attention.
that,
Sorry.
That's okay. So I was just going to say, equate it to alcohol. So lack of sleep has been shown to really impair your ability to drive the same way as drinking too much.
Oh, wow, that's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, but it makes so much sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
that's right. So being awake for 18 hours actually results in similar levels of reduced coordination and judgment and slower reaction times to someone who's got a blood alcohol content of 0.05, which is the current legal limit for fully licensed drivers.
Wow, that's a very powerful piece of information there, isn't it? I hadn't thought about how risky really it is to be so sleep deprived, but yeah, oh gosh, that's very sobering.
I was going to say it helps to pay attention to those road rules and road signs then.
Well, that's right. But it makes sense though, really. It does. If I recall back to times when I was very sleep deprived, you're just not sharp, are you? You can't concentrate the way that you do when you're well rested.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So here's the $1 million question, Dr. Sleep. How do we get a good night's sleep?
Yes, it is indeed $1 million question. So there are many things, luckily, that we can do to help us get a good night's sleep. Us psychologists tend to call these practices good sleep hygiene, but you can also think of them as healthy sleep habits or sleep do's and don'ts. So these strategies are not plucked out of the air, but underpinned by a lot of research. And there's a large body of evidence to suggest that they can provide some long-term solutions to sleep difficulties. The first one I wanted to chat about is just creating a bedroom environment that encourages sleep. This means making your bedroom a place of comfort and relaxation. And though that might just seem like a really obvious thing to say, it's often overlooked.
Yeah.
So in designing your sleep environment, you can focus on maximizing comfort and minimizing distractions using some strategies such as really investing in a good mattress and pillow. So if you are going to spend your money on something, this is something to consider. I mean, we do spend so much time in bed that it's worth investing in these things. It's going to ensure that your spine also gets proper support to avoid aches and pains as well.
Oh gosh, that's so true, isn't it? I don't know about you guys, but if I ever go away anywhere, I always take my pillow with me, because if I don't have a pillow that's a good pillow, I just don't sleep as well. So I think that's so true. Investing in a good pillow and mattress is definitely worth your money to do.
For sure. And it's very personal too. So, what one person might find comfortable, someone else might find really uncomfortable. So it's a bit of going around perhaps to a mattress or pillow shop and trying out a whole lot of different ones and finding one that is going to help you drop off to sleep. As well as that, sheets and blankets and doonas all play a major role as well in helping your bed feel inviting. So you should be looking out for bedding that feels comfortable and maintains a comfortable temperature as well, not too hot and not too cold.
Yeah, great advice. Actually, I was just thinking you can even go to those. A lot of bedding stores have the mattresses. I did this recently when I bought a new mattress, and you lie down on the mattress that they have. It's got, I don't know, like little computer sensors or something in the actual mattress, and it checks you where, because each person obviously is built differently, so where you need the most support, and it does a little analysis for you, and it spits out this little report saying this kind of mattress would be ideal for you. So it's maybe even worth, that's free. Usually they do that for free.
That's cool.
Yes. That can be a good thing to do.
Brilliant.
Just, find out what the computer thinks is a good mattress for you.
That's pretty
cool.
I
mean, that sounds like a fun thing to do. I would also just say the computer is probably at the end of the day not going to know better than you. So
that's a very good point, Chloe. It's a very good point. Trust yourself. Don't trust the computer.
Yeah. But it's fun to do. It's kind of like when you go and get your shoes,
still worth
your
trying
runners
them
fitted.
out. Yeah, it's still worth trying them out.
Yeah.
Just test them out.
Oh, I think for me, like when I was choosing a mattress, it was a case of there were like 50 or more mattresses to choose from. And I was like, how on earth, where do I start? So even just having that to narrow it down to a smaller range, and then within that range, just tried a bunch until I found the one that I thought felt the best for me. So, but you may find that you lie on one that the computer wasn't in the range of the one suggested, and you go, actually, this is the one. Well, I think you should trust yourself then in that instance rather than the computer.
Yep. So the bedroom should also be dark if possible. So
yes.
yeah, excess light can really throw off your sleep and circadian rhythm. So if you can get blackout curtains over your windows, or if you can't make your bedroom completely dark, then you could try a sleep mask for over your eyes.
Yep, that's a good idea.
To block out light. You can buy them pretty much anywhere, but you can order them online. You can get fancy ones online. Yeah, cultivate peace and quiet. So keeping noise to a minimum, like we mentioned before. And if you can't eliminate noise, do consider drowning noise out with a fan or a white noise machine. Some people find these helpful. I personally don't, but earplugs or headphones are another option as well to stop abrasive sounds from bothering you.
Nice one. White noise machine. I haven't heard of that. Like, I know a fan would make white noise, but can you actually buy white noise machines that just spit out like an ocean sound or something? Oh, interesting. Okay.
I believe
also have apps now.
Yes,
yeah,
you
true.
Apps that actually have different types of noise or white noise. And these days with people with Google Assistant and or what is it, the Amazon or Apple stuff, you can probably program them. Yeah, that's right. You can program them to play certain sounds and they become the white noise. And you can choose different types of sounds like rainforest through to ocean, through to fan, through to vacuum cleaner. It's
vacuum cleaner.
A massive variety.
Sounds more like a nightmare.
I know, but you'd be curious to know that it's on the list. So it's interesting that people obviously may find themselves quite comforted by that rhythm.
Yeah.
Well, because I don't know whether this is true or not, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the theory with white noise and why we find it so comforting is that it's sort of a bit akin to the sounds we hear when we're in the womb.
Yes.
And that can be like quite a sort of a thrumming, swooshing kind of, like the mother's heartbeat and just, sloshing around in the amniotic fluid and whatever that sounds like. And so there's this kind of almost primal connection to that sound as being immediately soothing just because it's sort of, built into our early life experience. You do hear about parents who do the vacuuming and their child goes to sleep when they've got the vacuum cleaner on. So I wonder whether that's got something to do with the theory behind why you can get white noise that's a vacuum cleaner sound. I have heard that. I have heard parents saying I just had to turn the vacuum cleaner on, the baby went to sleep.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. But no, I agree with you, Chloe. That does not sound like my idea of a restful sleep environment.
Horses for courses, as they
say.
That's
right.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, and that's the same with scent. I mean, some people find scent very calming, such as lavender, but other people find that aromas are too stimulating to help them with sleep. So it's really important to experiment and to see what works for you.
Yeah.
And also
that can be a very personal thing, being that some of those scents can be like our olfactory senses is so associated with our memories, certain memories. So sometimes, like you said, that could be too stimulating because it's like it will just remind you of something at some time.
That's
and the last thing you want to do when you sleep is thinking about that or have your brain too active.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just going to say too, it's really important to try to keep as much as possible to a regular bedtime and wake up time. But if you are going to have to choose between those, I'd say a regular wake-up time, regardless of the time that you go to bed, is really essential for promoting a good night of sleep. It's quite challenging for your body to get accustomed to a healthy sleep routine if you're constantly waking up at different times. And even though it's a big ask on weekends and days off, but as much as possible, try and wake up and get out of bed at the same time each day.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good tip, particularly if you are struggling with sleep. Like there are some people that can sleep anywhere and sleep in or get up early and they just seem to bounce back kind of thing. But, if you're not one of those people, then having that routine and that regularity, it sounds like that's really important.
And I understand that even with, let's say, for example, sleeping in on weekend, as you were talking about just waking up around the same time, is there something about don't sleep more than an hour? It's like don't sleep in for more than an hour than you normally would. Something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, I think an hour, but you can probably get away with that without it really disrupting your sleep schedule too much.
Yeah, so that's still waking up roughly the same time.
Roughly, yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly. If you've had a big week and you just want a little bit of a treat and sleep in on the weekend, then an extra hour is probably not going to be a problem. It's just if you start, sleeping until noon and then you're expecting to go to bed at the same time at 10 or whatever it is you normally go to bed, it's probably not going to happen. sort of related to that too, if you are trying to adjust your schedule, I would recommend doing it gradually. It's best to make adjustments little by little over time to allow your body to get used to the changes.
Yes, that's a really good tip. I remember
Yep.
reading somewhere that for people who do shift work, like where they have to stay up overnight and sleep during the day, that the thing that works best, although places rarely do this, is to gradually shift the shift over by like an hour, every couple of days. And that's when you experience least disruption of that going from day to night or night to day kind of thing. So, like starting at midnight for a couple of days, then starting at 1 a.m. for a couple of days, then starting at, so just slowly sort of moving it over would cause less disruption than
Makes
just,
sense.
5 days on night shift and 5 days on day shift. But no one does
Makes
it. Like no one
sense.
listens to the research.
No.
Really, you hear about too many places that just don't do that at all. But that's, I think we do know that sort of gradual change is much better.
My hat off to people who are in like emergency services, like military, paramilitary, health services who do the shift work, because the changeover they do is my understanding is quite drastic. So they go from day shift to then evening shift.
Yes.
And it's like a few days on and then it's straight away. They might have a day or two of change in between of rest, but then they go straight into, and depending on the industry, straight into the night shift. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how your body adjusts to that.
No.
So hats off to them.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I was also just going to mention that another aspect of getting a good night's sleep is crafting what we call a positive pre-bed routine. This is something that like a set of activities that we do consistently that helps our body to know that it's almost time to go to sleep. There's a few things that we can do to help at this time. One thing that I would say is to wind down for at least 30 minutes before you go off to bed. If you're doing activities and your mind's really active right up till bedtime, you're going to find it harder to doze off smoothly than if your mind's already feeling quite at ease. So doing a quiet activity 30 minutes before bed, such as reading or low impact stretching, or listening to some soothing music or some kind of relaxation or meditation, are just examples of ways to get into the right frame of mind for sleep.
That's a great tip.
Sometimes like having the massage routine, people wash their face, brush their teeth, put lotion on, like you slowly massage your face. It kind of helps to relax your muscles. As you were talking about the stretching, it just reminds me of also that tip. Sometimes then it helps to kind of feel like, okay, just start to relax a little bit everywhere else.
Certainly. Yep. A bit of self-massage is a great idea. A lot of people think that a good way to wind down is to scroll through their phone at night. And unfortunately, this does not help. So using our phones or our laptops or our tablets right up to bedtime keeps our brain wired. So it makes it really hard to wind down. So the light from these devices can also suppress our natural production of melatonin. As much as possible, I know it can be really hard to do, but try to disconnect from your device for about 30 minutes or more before going to bed.
That's a really good tip. And I think also if you are going to use devices at night, not immediately before bed, maybe switch off the blue light. Like there's a way to do that in the settings because it's the blue light, I think, that's particularly stimulating for our brains. So I think a lot of people would have that habit of scrolling through their phone or on their iPad or on their laptop before bed.
Yeah. And you can get your phones and other devices to automatically switch over to that warmer lower light settings at a certain time of day, and then to not turn back onto the blue light until you're ready for it the next day.
Yep, absolutely. So check your settings app or check your settings on your device and find out how to do that if you don't already know. It's a good thing to do.
And if you can also just lower the lights in the home as well, about 30 minutes before sleep. So a lot of homes these days have quite bright LED downlights that can keep our brain quite active. So if you can dim the lights or just perhaps turn off the overhead lights and just have a few lamps, that can help us transition to bedtime and contribute to your body's production of melatonin as well.
That's a great tip. Yep. And that might be like a really simple thing that you can do that might make all the difference, right? Just, go to the op shop and buy a lamp or something and see how that works for you, having that sort of an hour or so before bedtime in that lower light. That might be the one thing that makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so another thing that people will often do to help induce drowsiness is have a drink at night of alcohol. And it's called a nightcap for that reason. But unfortunately, alcohol, although it does make us feel drowsy initially, it does affect the body in ways that can actually lower sleep quality. And for that reason, if possible, it's best to avoid alcohol in the lead up to bedtime. Having said that, if you like to have a glass of wine with dinner, that's fine, but try and keep a few hours between having an alcoholic drink and then going to bed.
I think the research is about something to do with the alcohol, like we don't get the deep sleep once we have some alcohol in the system. So you don't feel like when you wake up, you don't feel rested altogether, or it promotes something like middle of the night waking.
Yes.
And then you don't feel rested and then it's hard to get back to sleep.
That's true. You might sort of pass out not literally pass out,
That's right.
but you might go off to
that's
sleep.
right.
Hopefully not pass out. You might go off to sleep quite easily, but then notice that you've woken up and you can't get back to sleep at around 3 or 4. That can be quite frustrating.
Yeah, I don't think anyone could honestly say that after a night of drinking that they had good sleep. Like I just, that's certainly not been my experience anyway, even just after a couple of drinks. So, yeah, that's a good tip.
Another thing that can be good is having a hot or warm bath or shower about 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. So what this does is actually raise your body temperature, and then you start to feel sleepy as your body temperature drops again. So
okay.
Yeah, so not having a bath 10 minutes before you're going to bed because your body temperature will still be high. But then if you're a couple of hours before and you've got that drop in body temperature, you're going to start to feel more sleepy.
Oh, that's so interesting because there is an interaction, isn't there, between the sleep-wake cycle and the body temperature cycle? Like your temperature does drop overnight if that's when you're sleeping, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that becomes a body signal by the sounds of it to tell your body to get ready for sleep. And so you can almost sort of trick it into saying, okay, we're going into sleepy mode. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it works with the bedding or the comforter or our doona. So it's like you don't want your doona to be too hot or your bed to be too hot or your PJs to be too warm or constricting. All of that helps promote like a certain body temperature that helps with the sleep and
makes
staying
sense.
asleep.
That's right. And it's finding that sweet spot too. You don't want to go to bed freezing because that can really interfere with sleep, especially if you've got really cold feet. So even if the rest of you's dressed quite lightly, you might maybe have some socks on initially and kick them off during the night. I don't know. But I think around 18 degrees Celsius is considered the ideal temperature for sleep.
Oh, there you go. Good one.
So, there are many things that we can do before bed to help us sleep better.
Yeah, that's a great list of tips.
Like we've talked about that, how important our environment is, wind down routines, so things that we can do of an evening as we wind down, as we come to pre-bed kind of routine or ritual. So is it also important what we do during the day with our functioning to help with our sleep quality?
Absolutely. Yeah, preparing for a good night's sleep shouldn't just happen before bedtime.
Right.
So, there are things that we can do all throughout the day to help promote a good night's sleep. And of all those things, I would say the most important thing is to see the light of day. Yeah, our body clocks are regulated by light exposure, and sunlight has the strongest effect of all.
Oh, that's such a good tip, because I imagine many students, particularly if they're like my son's really into gaming, for example, and you can be in your room with all the lights off and just the computer screen on all through the day if you're playing a really good game and you're really into it. But yes, of course, that's going to have an impact on your sleep because you haven't actually seen the light of day. You haven't experienced the sun for that biological rhythm to be triggered.
Yeah, for sure. And even if you can't get out in the daylight, which hopefully you can for at least a short amount of time, but if you can't, even just opening up windows or blinds to let in some natural light is going to help.
Yeah, for sure.
I was reading a book. I think he's a neuroscientist, neuropsych, and talking about how earlier sort of civilization, with our clocks and all that sort of stuff, like tribes, for example, how they manage sleep. And it's like they're often guided by, light. You wake up when the sun rises and when it's dark, and you can build fires. But what happens with pre-fire? You sleep when the sun goes down. And that's how the circadian rhythm is managed generally. Whereas nowadays our nights are longer, our evenings are longer, because we have stuff to do and we have light that assists us in the activities that we do at night, but it also drags out the nighttime, but it also drags out our sleep cycle to be less so. It compresses that.
So
not
true.
all of us get the good quality or good night's sleep, or like the length of sleep.
Yeah, makes sense. Chloe, I've heard that for some people, difficulties with sleep might actually be because they've formed a strong association between being in bed and not sleeping. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, that's absolutely the case, Liz. So many people with sleep problems report being very tired leading up to bed. In fact, they might be feeling tired all day long. But then as soon as they get into bed, they're just wide awake. It's like a switch has been turned and they just can't fall asleep. This is unfortunately quite a common scenario. It's associated with a lot of sleep, long-term sleep problems. And it's sort of technical term is conditioned arousal, where the person has learned on a cognitive level to associate being in bed with being awake and feeling alert and thinking and feeling anxious or frustrated. So it usually develops over time, and the person with this problem, the reason it usually develops is that they have repeatedly engaged in activities over time in bed that aren't sleeping. So ideally the bed should just be used for sleep and for intimacy. Just wondering if you can all think of anything that students in particular might be doing in bed other than those recommended activities.
I reckon a lot of students would study in bed, right? Especially in the winter months when it's cold and it's like you get into bed under your doona kind of thing, but you're doing something that's actually incredibly cognitively stimulating whilst being in bed.
I think a lot of us do the scrolling, scrolling through our phone or devices in bed.
Yes,
becomes
for sure.
So habitual.
And more so, like you said, Liz, in winter, because, people might be trying to save on heating costs, and so they're wrapped up in their doonas in bed. Students often don't have a lot of space in their homes, or they're in a share house, so their bed might be one of the few places where they feel like it's their own space, and so they end up doing a lot of things like watching TV, like you said, studying or scrolling. Other things that people often do in bed other than sleep and sex are worrying. Worrying is a big one. About the past or the future, or not being able to get to sleep, worrying about that. Gaming is another one. Planning for the next day, writing lists, or just mentally planning about all the things that we have to do. Having rushing thoughts from sort of random topic to topic, just feeling like your mind is going everywhere, being unable to turn off your mind. So these are all things. Often people might not have had a chance to talk to their partner until you're both in bed, and so you can find that, heavy issues might come up that you start chatting about in bed. There might be arguments sometimes in bed, which can cause a lot of stress around the bed. And things like eating and drinking are also really common in bed.
Definitely.
So what happens when someone's doing all these things in bed other than sleeping and intimacy is that the brain has then associated, okay, I'm in bed. This is when I'm really aroused and really awake, and I'm not at all feeling like I'm going to sleep in this space. But luckily, these responses can be changed. So by changing what we do in bed, so by changing our behavior, we can help to, over time, to retrain our brain so that being in bed gradually becomes associated with being relaxed and asleep. And this process we call conditioned sleepiness.
I like the sound of that.
Yes. The therapeutic approach to achieve conditioned sleepiness is called stimulus control therapy. And there's plenty of information about stimulus control therapy for sleep problems online that people can access. All you have to do is do a Google search for that, and you'll get information. But I will walk our listeners through the basic steps of it here so they can get a sense of it.
Great.
If we've got time for that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I think this is
love to hear it.
This information's gold. So please, yes.
Absolutely.
Yep. So like I've already said, for step 1 is to only use the bed for sleep and intimacy. So just don't do anything else in bed, not even read. If you can, ideally do any of the other activities that we mentioned in another room of the house. But if that isn't possible, at least another part of the bedroom rather than in the bed, such as sitting at a desk or even sitting on the floor next to the bed if you have to, just to help your brain understand that's not what the bed is for. It's not for being awake and thinking. The other important step is to only lie down to go to bed and try to sleep when you actually start to feel sleepy. So you get that wave of sleepiness, that heavy feeling that comes on when you're sleepy. If you're not getting that feeling, don't go to bed, even if it is scheduled bedtime. So you must wait to feel tired before you go to bed.
Catching that wave.
Yeah, catching the sleep wave, we call it. So you've caught the sleep wave, you've gone to bed, but if you can't fall asleep within about 20 minutes, and don't use a timer, please. That will make it worse.
The timer goes off just as you've fallen asleep.
Yes,
have you fallen asleep? It's 20
and
minutes.
You're awake.
I was asleep.
Yeah, that will do the opposite. But have a guess. If you haven't fallen asleep after about 20 minutes to half an hour, just don't lie there. So many people make the mistake of lying in bed for hours and hours, sort of trying to will themselves to, if I just lie here still enough and keep my eyes closed, I'll go to bed. And that's not recommended, because that is still strengthening that association between being awake and in bed. You should get out of bed if you can't go to sleep after about 20 minutes and go into another room if possible, if not another part of the bedroom, and just try and do something relaxing. When I say that, though, I'm not including going on a device. Make sure your relaxing activity is something that is not going to be stimulating your brain. So people might find reading to be useful to help them to wind down, to get, especially because it makes your eyes feel a bit heavy after a while.
Or read a boring book. So
yes, read
too
a boring
stimulating.
book. You might try meditation or some stretching, or you could do something boring like the dishes. Sounds weird doing it in the middle of the night, but doing a boring chore can also be beneficial because it's taking that pressure off the next day. I have to get this, and this done. So you're actually getting that double positive of getting sleepy, but also getting something that's not too mentally taxing done.
Just don't turn the vacuum cleaner on.
No.
Unless you're one of those people that responds to the noise of the vacuum cleaner.
You can turn the vacuum on, you just can't use it.
Good point.
So maybe something like the dishes with the warm water, or even some milk. Sometimes people make their lunch, in the middle of the night if they can't sleep for the next day.
Talking about food, actually, would you recommend some people do a warm milk with honey?
I mean, sure. If you go to bed too hungry, you're not going to be able to fall asleep as easily.
Yes.
Having a warm drink could be useful. Even a light snack might be helpful. But
you also don't want to be too full either. Then you can't sleep.
Yeah, that's right, for sure. Yeah, having a heavy meal before bed is going to make it harder to fall asleep because your body is still digesting. Like a light snack such as some yogurt or maybe some cheese and crackers could help to just find that balance between not being too hungry and too full, that Goldilocks, just right kind of space for sleep.
Yeah. That definitely worked for me in the years that I struggled with insomnia when I was pregnant with my children. And, it's happened at other times as well. I found having just some salada biscuits with a bit of Vegemite, just a couple, was actually good at helping me, soothe myself to then be able to sleep. But it wasn't too heavy that it sat really heavily in my stomach kind of thing. That was definitely a go-to for me.
Yeah. So once you're out of bed and you're doing your relaxing activity, whatever it is, you then don't go back to bed again until you start to feel sleepy, until you catch that sleep wave. And you basically repeat those steps as often as required until you eventually fall asleep. You can also do that if you wake up after falling asleep and you don't drop back off to sleep quickly. And then the final important part of that is, regardless of what time you do end up going to sleep, you should try as much as possible to get up at roughly the same time each day. This technique that we've just walked through, this stimulus control therapy, it can be very effective, but there's a few important points to remember. One is that we really do need to be patient with these steps and consistent. It can take a lot of time for our brain to rewire itself in a way to associate the bed with being asleep. And it is really normal and expected to feel frustrated during this process as your brain takes time to adjust and to learn these new associations. When implementing these steps too, another thing that usually happens, and you should be kind of expecting this if you're serious about these steps, is that sleep will probably get a little bit worse before it gets better. This is completely normal and shouldn't be cause for concern. I would say to try these steps for about 6 weeks, and you might be surprised if you stick with it consistently how much your sleep improves as a result.
And would you recommend keeping a diary of some sort for people to want to keep track of it? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, sure. You can just keep your own journal of it, or there's plenty of sleep diaries online. Again, if you just Google sleep diary, you'll get a whole lot of options for that, where you can record your total hours in bed, total hours of sleep, wake up time, sleep time. There's other things. There's more detailed ones that might talk about the quality of your sleep. I would say, though, that using a sleep diary is probably something to do short term as you're just working out your sleep patterns. You don't want to do it too long term because it can actually make the natural patterns of sleep feel a little bit regimented and overly controlled if you're doing it every night for months on end.
Sure. Great tips. As with many things, they're kind of like skills that we need to build and to train ourselves or to relearn. I guess we all take it for granted that we can just sleep just like that, and we can have a good night's sleep just like that, and we can unlearn some of the habits that we've unknowingly built over time. It sounds like these are skills that we should think about if we're struggling with sleep and sleep quality, to actually relearn again or build up again.
For sure. Yep. I was just going to say, but on that, it's just important to give them enough time to take effect.
That's a very good point. I guess my next question was, so what happens if I notice these tips are not working for me? Is there a time I should be seeing someone about it? I'm really kind of curious about that point, is there a time frame where I should give this a go and a good go? And then are there professionals then I should be talking to at a later stage if I'm still struggling?
Yeah, so like I just mentioned before, sleep might get temporarily worse before it gets better when you are applying these strategies. So that's not necessarily cause for alarm. But if you have been, after about 6 weeks, if you've been really consistently using the tips and the steps that we've just gone through, and you notice that your sleep just isn't improving or it's getting worse, then it may be time to make an appointment with your GP to arrange a referral to an appropriate sleep specialist for further assessment and treatment planning. And so while we've been discussing strategies that can be very effective for sleep problems, some people might be diagnosed with sleep disorders that may require more specific treatment approaches. So a sleep disorder, so how does it differ from just a sleep problem? Well, there are many similarities, obviously, but a disorder is usually determined by the intensity or the duration of symptoms, as well as subjective indicators of sleep dissatisfaction and the level of clinical distress and the extent of functional impairment. So, for example, insomnia, a lot of people say, I'm an insomniac, or I've got insomnia.
That's right.
But they may not, they might just have a sleep problem. So insomnia is diagnosed if sleep disturbance is present for at least 3 months and at least 3 days per week, in addition to several other criteria as well.
Oh, great.
Good to
That's
know.
really good advice. Do you have any other resources for our listeners, Chloe? Like we mentioned before about podcasts that might be helpful to listen to. What are some other things that you can leave us with that might be some good things to try?
Yeah, there's just a wealth of information out there, many resources that people can access to help with sleep. So definitely podcasts.
Like this one.
Yes, this one, of
Absolutely.
course. This is your go-to. There are two others that I know of that have helped many of my clients. One is called Bore You to Sleep with Teddy, which is where the reader reads boring books, really boring old books, in a slow and monotonous kind of tone of voice. Many people say that it helps them to drop off to sleep.
Yeah.
Another one that is good is called Nothing Much Happens, which is bedtime stories to help you sleep. And this is by Catherine Nicolai. So in this podcast, the reader, Catherine, reads gentle and soothing bedtime stories that are intended for adults, not children, where nothing too exciting happens, but they are still lovely stories. And each episode, she will read the same story twice, but the second time she reads it more slowly. There are also many apps out there that can help with sleep. A few that come to mind. One is Headspace, which is known as a meditation app, but it's also really great for sleep, as well as bedtime meditations. Headspace has sleep casts, which are, they're audio experiences that help you to calm down and visualize calming scenes such as a slow-moving train or a walk through a garden.
That sounds lovely.
Another one is called Slumber, and that offers a combination of experiences to help you fall asleep, such as meditation and bedtime stories and soothing sounds, such as rain on a tin roof or waves crashing. There are so many apps out there for sleep, and I'd really encourage listeners to search online and read about them, and of course to read reviews to see how others might have found them to be helpful.
And nothing hurts you to give it a try, right? And if it's not right for
That's
you, move on to a different one.
Yeah. There are a couple of books too that I'd recommend. So a good one to find out more about why we sleep is called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And another really good book on sleep, which does include some of the strategies that we've discussed here today, as well as a lot of other very useful information, is called Overcoming Insomnia and Sleep Problems, a self-help guide using cognitive behavioural techniques by Colin Espy. So I'd give that one a read if you're interested.
Oh, fantastic.
Great.
Is there anything we've missed in our discussion today that are some useful tips for people to improve their sleep?
Yeah, just before we do finish up, I think there's a couple of extra tips that perhaps I forgot to mention that are important that we can do during the day that will help our sleep quality at night. So I might just mention a couple of those before we finish up.
Sounds good.
So in addition to seeing the light of day, I think that it's really important if you can find some time to move. It doesn't have to be too strenuous, but any form of daily exercise, and preferably outdoors, has across the board benefits for health in terms of the changes in energy use and body temperature, and also just creating a body that is wanting to sleep because it's been active and would like to rest. Getting some exercise during the day is definitely recommended, although not too close to bedtime if it's intense exercise, because it actually may hinder your body's ability to settle down before sleep. So if you are going to exercise before bedtime, make sure it's more gentle, such as a walk or some stretching.
That makes
going
sense.
to the gym before bed, it's probably too active for someone.
Yeah, I'd say so. The gym is great, but if you can go earlier in the day, it's probably going to be better for sleep. Yep. Something else, of course, is to monitor your caffeine intake. So caffeine, we all love almost everyone loves caffeine to help keep us alert and awake during the day. And caffeine's found in many substances, such as coffee and tea and energy drinks and chocolate as well. And all these act as stimulants and can interfere with the ability to fall asleep. So just keep an eye on your caffeine intake and avoid it later in the day when it can become a barrier to falling asleep. I know for myself, I love my coffee, but I won't have any after 2 o'clock, because if I do, then I know it's always a bit harder to fall asleep.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I have found that I've needed to switch. I don't drink coffee, but I've had to switch to a decaffeinated tea as I've gotten older, because I noticed that as well. Like if I have too much tea, my sleep, I just find it so much harder to fall asleep. So switching to even to a decaffeinated version of the same drink, if once you get used to the taste, you can still enjoy the drink without the caffeine, overstimulation.
And I imagine we're all quite sensitive, like we're at different times of our lives or stage of life, but also different people have different sensitivity to substances, and that includes caffeine. So some of us might be much more sensitive if you only have one coffee a day, and that can kind of give you that stimulation for the whole day, whereas some people can tolerate it quite well, and some people might have they build up that tolerance over time because of the intake, but it is also a good idea to try to reduce that if you are struggling with sleep.
Absolutely, yeah. It's finding what works for the individual. Another thing to keep in mind is to limit napping during the day. Not saying that you need to cut it out altogether. Some people might find a short nap beneficial. But if you do nap for too long or too late in the day, it can really throw off your sleep schedule and make it harder to get to sleep when you want to at night. So if you do need to nap, the best time is earlier in the day and around 20 minutes. Definitely don't nap longer than, say, 30 minutes, because you'll be really interrupting your sleep when you want to go to bed. And try not to nap after 3 p.m. if you're wanting to go to bed at night.
That's a great tip. Power naps are good, but long naps might interfere with your sleep.
That's right.
Yeah. And we were talking about this in a separate conversation about how that can interfere with our sleep cycle at night and the stages of sleep that we go through in a cycle. I think from memory it was something to do with that can actually, say, for example, steal a cycle that we're supposed to have during the nighttime if we sleep for too long during the day.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Chloe, Dr. Sleep, for all of that fantastic information about how we can start to improve our sleep. And as we've said many times today, but it is such an important topic. Good sleep really is at the heart of good well-being. I think we all know that personally, as well as just knowing that we're a bunch of psychologists. We know these things. You can trust us, but it is very much at the heart of good well-being. So we thank you for listening today and hope that you've had an aha moment maybe, or you've made a great discovery to help you on the way to better sleep. And we wish you all sweet dreams.
Thanks. Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today on the Counselling Armchair. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned a useful thing or two. Have a great week, and just remember that life can be amazing. See you next time.
Isn't life so amazing? Sometimes it can get crazy, but hey, that's okay. We've got another day to make mistakes and say sorry. There's no sense in our worry, 'cause all we can do is try our best to make it through.